Good morning, and we are live.
Morning, Rich. How you doing, brother?
Good, sir. You care to share with us that one thing you were telling me before we came on about the?
The hardest part of the zombie apocalypse
Uh-huh.
is pretending I'm not excited. I've been watching The Walking Dead, headshots. I feel ready. I feel ready for this, Rich.
Yeah. You know what's going to help get ready for that? It's a cool fire trainer.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because, the clicks from dry fire attract zombies. So you got to
That's
keep
right.
your skills up during the zombie apocalypse using the cool fire trainer.
We've been saying it for years, Will,
Yeah.
haven't we? About the cool
We
fire
were, we
trainer.
were, we were so far ahead of the times, Rich.
I know. You want to have felt recoil? You need to pick up a cool fire trainer. That's one of this morning's sponsors for Coffee with Rich. Cool fire trainer. It's your gun. All you got to do is replace the barrel and the recoil spring, and you get felt recoil. I mean, if you want to be ready for the zombie apocalypse, you want to have your headshot game down, please pick up the cool fire trainer. And you know what else you're going to need in the zombie apocalypse? Mountain Man Medical.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Mountain Man Medical, man. I'm telling you, go pick up a co-branded trauma kit because right now, as inflation continues to soar, me and my wife and a couple of kids, we went to this little diner on the side of the road, Will, and it was $58 for lunch.
Holy cow.
$58 for lunch in a little diner in Cumberland County, Tennessee. So that tells you that's a lead in for today's show, as Will's going to take us from 1982 until 2007 as an emerging threat to our economy. You're not gonna want to miss today's show. So please hit that share button, and let's talk about Mountain Man Medical. Man, I want to finish up by saying for what they're charging for for a co-branded trauma kit. Man, I'm a mess this morning.
More coffee, sir. More
Yeah, I
coffee.
know. Here we go.
Yep.
You're going to want to pick this up. And here's why, because you never know what life's throws at you. Maybe Will does get excited because we have a zombie apocalypse. You're not going to be able to go to the ER. You're going to need to rely on that trauma kit. Please follow the link in today's show notes, AmericanWarriorShow.com. On the right-hand side of the page, going to take you to a link. You can go over to Mountain Man Medical, pick up some gear. Maybe you don't need an entire kit. Maybe you just need to replace those gloves that have rotten away in your go bag, because they do, folks.
Yep.
You got to replace them periodically. If stuff's been sitting in your car in the sun and the heat, it's going to start breaking down. It's sitting in the range bag, not getting used, thank God.
Yes.
It is going to break down. So you need to replace that kit from time to time. We've got 18 folks joining us. Please like and hit that share button. So Mountain Man Medical, check them out. It would make in all seriousness, it would make an amazing Christmas gift for someone.
Yep.
So think about that. APPHemp.com, which is AppalachianStandard.com, makers of the finest CBD products money can possibly buy. They are setting records over there at APPHemp.com, which is Appalachian Standard. My good friend Jesse Ross and his beautiful family growing the finest CBD products money can buy. It's full spectrum stuff. It will help you sleep better. It will help your joints feel better, but it will also help you pop positive on a urinalysis test. So keep that in mind.
Well, now in the zombie apocalypse, Rich, I mean, there's gonna be a lot of running, so there's gonna be some joint pain with that. So probably want to stock up and be prepared.
And Will, that's what you bring to this. You're always forward thinking. That's what I love about you. Always. Rule number one is cardio, right?
I'm here to be part of the problem, and don't you forget it, sir.
That's right. We also need to talk about precision holsters, man. Makers of the Ultra Appendix rig that I wear. If you think Michael Seeklander is the coolest thing in school, then you're going to want to pick up the Michael Seeklander line of holsters from Precision Holsters. And last but not least, Century Martial Arts, makers of the Bob XL. Bob XL, if you don't know, Bob stands for Body Opponent Bag, and it's going to take your strike game to the next level. You want to shoot, Bob? No problem. A little ground and pound. You've been watching some old Bass Rutten fights or Don Fry, and you want to do some ground and pound? That's not a problem. Bob will take all that. Let's welcome some folks onto the show.
Yeah. I see TC's the last one to check on here. I believe the last one has to buy breakfast. Isn't that right, Rich?
That's what I heard.
Okay. All right. We'll get together and make that happen for TC.
My good friend Will Parker's on coin number 800. John Shriver from Yukon, Oklahoma is on. He says he's coin number 1919. You want to find out what a coin number is? I've made it real easy for you in today's show notes. It says, get your coin. Click that link. It'll take you right to it. Check that out. Will Rhodes is on from Missouri, coin number 2269. Scott is on. Says, good morning, boys, from mid-Michigan. Let's see. Mark Few says, thank you, American Warrior Society, for your sponsorship of the 2021 CCP Championship presented by Walther Arms. Thanks, Rich. Hey, Mark, I heard it was a really, really good match down there. We appreciate everything that you're doing for the sport, Mark. Please keep up the good work. Kyle is on from the Philippines. Alan says, finally get to watch a live Coffee of the Rich, tied up teaching for the last 2 weeks. Good morning from Free, Virginia. Tony is on from Brunswick, Georgia. My brother Jeff Brown is on down there in Key West. Man, living the dream.
I am jealous.
We got 20 folks joining us live. Please hit that share button. TC says, sure, chow's on me. Stop on by. Corbett is on.
You better hope the show doesn't get shared too far and wide.
Yeah, I tell you. Okay, so Will, without further ado, man, tell us what today's show, give us a little taste of it.
Yeah, so we're going to go from 1980. Things settled down after everything Rich talked about last time with the high interest rates to kill off the high inflation of the 70s. Really started the true recovery in 80. There was a short recession in 82, but it was very short-lived. And so then we started a period called the Great Moderation. And this is just really a pretty quiet time economically. There were a few things here and there. There was the dot-com bubble in 99 and obviously 9/11 and the economic damage that did. But overall, compared to other 20-year periods prior to that, it was pretty quiet economically. So the Fed took a little different tact versus in the past when they would just hand down their changes. They really started wanting to make things a little more predictable for the business environment. The whole era was pretty much shepherded by Alan Greenspan, known as the Maestro. If you're bored sometime, go watch some of his congressional testimony, and he would speak in riddles. There was a famous line of congressman said, "Well, I believe you said," and he said, "Well, if you understood me, perhaps I misspoke." So he would speak in these riddles, but the signals they would give in between congressional testimonies was pretty clear. And so this has created a weird conundrum today in that people are so used to being signaled by the Fed what's coming that they can't just say, "Oh, we think we're going to do this." Like right now, Rich, they're purchasing corporate bonds and mortgage-backed securities right now. And it had been $120 billion a month. The Fed has been doing that. And now they're starting to taper that by $15 billion per month. So this month December now will be $90 billion a month.
You know what bothers me about that? Most people hear that and go, "Oh, the Fed's buying these mortgage-backed securities," and okay, whatever that means. But a lot of those are toxic, as I understand.
They are, and the corporate ones too. I mean, there are corporations out there. They're referred to, no pun with our earlier discussion, they're referred to as zombie corporations, where they're literally borrowing money to buy back their own shares, and they're dependent upon that share price going up so they can pay back those bonds because they're not making enough profit to do it. But it keeps working because the stock market keeps going up.
I talked about this last year when I did that show on economic collapse, like in March of last year, maybe April, I can't remember. But this idea that one of the most dangerous things that can happen is you got all this free money coming in and nobody's taking out loans. So you're going to have these banks and stuff buying and doing some of the things that we said or investing in the stock market. So you're going to see a false sign of the stock market. Wow, it's just really going.
Yeah.
The velocity of money must be. No, it's not.
It's not. And that reminds me of a story just prior to the Great Depression. I forget which Kennedy it was, but it was I think it was Robert Kennedy Sr. He was a wealthy man and living in New York City, and he was getting a shoe shine from a shoe shine boy. And the shoe shine boy, who I'm imagining 8, 9, 10 years old, gives him a stock tip. And he went, "I'm getting a stock tip from a shoe shine boy? This is ridiculous." And he sold everything. Luckily for the Kennedy family, just a few days before the crash in 1929. And I feel like we're getting to that again. I mean, I felt it with a housing crash, and I'm feeling like we're there again.
Well, isn't that also what they said about Weimar Germany right before the
Mhm.
collapse when the elevator man was giving you
Yep.
stock tips? It's like, oh
Yep.
no,
Yep. Absolutely.
Every- everybody's out there got their hands in it, and in that way everybody's going to be affected. But I want to circle
Mhm.
back one final thing on that.
Sure.
This idea that the Fed is out there spending billions of dollars every month. Is that what you said, right? Well,
Yes, every month.
buying corporate bonds, because a lot of these, like you said, are zombie corporations. They don't produce anything. They're corporation on paper. And
Mhm.
what bothers me is a similar thing that we talked about last week, and that is moral hazard. You have these bankers go out
Mhm.
there and make these terrible decisions, and there's hey, no problem, because the Fed's going to come along and they don't want us to fail, so they're going to buy them and stick them on their balance sheet.
Yep.
And that just continues to keep the cycle going.
Yep. There's a great video. Uh, I'll try to find the link for it after the show and put it up in the coin members area. Rick Santelli, who at the time was one of the he was on television, a financial guy on CNBC, when housing market crashed and the Fed started handing money out. He was the one that kind of started the whole Tea Party thing, as far as in name at least, in that he was down there, he just ranted for about 7 or 8 minutes, and it was awesome. And one of the traders was behind him working, and he turns around and says, "It's a moral hazard." And so, it with the financial people I know, they even know about this, but if they want to make their income and make their quarterly bonuses and their annual bonuses, you got to ride the wave that's there.
Yeah.
And so it becomes that self-licking ice cream cone where if you don't jump on it, well, you're going to lose out. And we just got to hope we get off the train before it goes off the cliff.
Yeah, Scott says, I remember a Playboy Playmate giving housing investment tips before the last bubble burst. Well, there you
Yeah,
go.
it was the housing tip. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. It's, and I go to Hooters for the food, right? Um, yeah.
I heard that we should probably introduce ourselves. My name is Rich Brown, co-host, co-founder of the American War Society and the American War Show. And this is the Eye Candy Monday. I'm sorry, Emerging Threats Monday with Will Wood and I. And Will, as I've introduced you before, a lot of people don't know this about Will. He was actually voted sexiest commercial airline pilot alive 3 years running. And Will,
Yeah, there was one of us in the competition. I'm a legend in my own mind. So, um, but going back to the serious stuff here, Rich, people talk about the Fed buying these bonds, and that was all in response to the pandemic. But the reason they did that was because they didn't want to go to negative interest rates. They had to do something after interest rates hit zero. And unlike the Europeans, we didn't want to go to negative interest rates. And negative interest rates, if you think about that, if you deposit your money somewhere, you get less back in the future.
Yeah.
That is unreal. It's one thing if it's inflation adjusted and you're losing purchasing power, but it's another thing if you physically get fewer dollars back out of your savings account after a year. So
Yeah.
they knew that wouldn't fly with the American people, because then they're going to pull their money out of the banking system. So they went to buying up these corporate bonds and mortgage-backed securities, and it's just creating a moral hazard there, because there's no reason to run a responsible company, because we're going to get free money every month and the Fed's going to buy our bonds.
That's right.
So, and unfortunately, that's sort of, that much of that same mentality is what led to the housing bubble and the pain there. So it goes
Yeah.
back. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, if those of you that are watching or listening to the show, if you haven't watched The Big Short, do yourself a favor. I mean, or read Michael Lewis's amazing book, The Big Short, to understand that whole housing crisis, because it was a hell of a Ponzi scheme.
Yes. And oh gosh, remind me, who was the guy that, I know Michael Lewis wrote the book. Who was the guy who actually did it?
You're talking about Dr. Michael Burry?
Yes.
Yep.
Thank you. He is out there right now. He's very pessimistic right now. He said he's more pessimistic now about the financial future than he was then. He's calling for an even larger crash.
Yeah, he is. And Dr. Michael Burry is an amazing guy. He's played by Christian Bale in the movie. And he's calling for, I believe he's calling for hyperinflation is what he's saying.
Yes, he is.
Yeah.
And
this is the guy that saw the housing crisis coming when nobody else did. So Might want
Yep.
to pay attention.
He dug into it and he saw how those mortgage-backed securities were actually being packaged up and sold off as AAA, which is the highest rating, and they weren't anywhere near it.
No.
And kind of like a currency, as long as everybody believed they were AAA, right?
That's all right.
Until somebody believed otherwise. So, one of the things going back to it is, with the Fed's desire now for a modest business cycle, so they don't get real high highs and not real low lows. Part of that is their predictability. And if I recall correctly, Jerome Powell talked 3 different times about tapering the current bond purchases before they actually did it. So they were talking about, and the next month they were talking about, and then they were talking about it, then they did it. So the stock market is so accustomed now to predictability and knowing what the future is going to bring. When something happens that's unexpected, there's going to be a lot of panic out there, I believe.
I think so too, because you're right. Well, there's a lot of, we're thinking about doing this.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay. So the market knows the direction that everything's going. But when that doesn't happen, it's just like right now, we kept hearing that, and this inflation's transitory. It's transitory. Now they're saying, well, maybe not.
Yeah.
Maybe
that word doesn't mean what I thought it meant, you know? The word transitory always made me chuckle to myself, because transitory just means not permanent. Well, nothing's really permanent, is it? So therefore, by definition, every depression is transitory. But I'll bet you in about 1930, it didn't feel so transitory.
No.
Yeah. So now, Rich, I want to dig into the numbers, because since this was a moderate period, there isn't really a whole lot to talk about. Inflation stayed low during this whole time. I want to talk about how these numbers are measured and how they change, because it really does matter.
Please.
I think they're going to change them again here at some point to paper over problems. So let's talk about inflation first there, brother. There's 2 kinds of inflation they talk about. The first one is headline inflation, which is, that's the number. It includes everything. And then there's core inflation, which is headline inflation minus food and energy, because those prices are volatile. And I don't know about you, but I buy food and energy every month. So,
oh yeah, we all do, man.
Yeah. So, from a analytic standpoint, some analyst sitting somewhere with a spreadsheet, okay, I can break this out. Where is this at? Each factor of it. But they will, every time headline inflation is higher than they want, they go, yeah, but core inflation minus food and energy, that's this price. Well, tell that to the guy working down the factory. He doesn't care. Prices went up by this much,
And the other thing is, what's funny about that is you can't hide the core inflation. Because it's a gallon of gasoline. Whereas the headline inflation can be affected by shrinkflation, right?
Correct. Yep. So it's another way to spin the number, and it sounds all official. It's core. It's the core. Well, I think food is pretty darn core to my existence, and energy is pretty core to keeping my house warm or cool. So anytime somebody starts playing with the numbers, my spidey sense starts going off, and they've been playing with these numbers for a long time.
Well, yeah, it's funny. It's you don't think food's that important? Like somebody said, we're 9 meals away from an apocalypse.
Yep, absolutely. I mean, and look around the world. I mean, that's food prices kicked off the Arab Spring, and all the unrest in Mexico a number of years back kicked off because of high corn prices, and their diet is highly based around corn. So that's almost every huge social unrest around the world has started off with people not being able to buy food.
So I get it. We got headline, we got core, but there's this other thing I keep hearing about, CPI. What's that?
CPI. Okay. So that's Consumer Price Index, also known as CPI, because they lie about this stuff.
How could they lie? I mean, it sounds so.
It's as long as you cross your fingers behind your back, it's not really a lie. So that's kind of what happens. So what they do is they go buy a basket of goods and they measure how much that costs. And whatever that did compared to the month before and the year before is your month over month and year over year inflation. So, but what if you don't buy the same goods, Rich?
Yeah.
What if we buy something a little different? And that's what they started playing with for a long time. They just bought the exact same basket of goods and reported the price, which is what, if you want a reliable statistic, that's what you have to do, right? And if I change the size of the target at the IDPA match that you guys sponsored, well, now suddenly Will beats Rich. Well, but I shot a totally different target. So what's that matter? Right.
Right.
So
there's Will, I saw there's a subreddit out there where there's a woman that's tracking these things. And what she did was like, she took a thing of shampoo, peeled the plastic label off, and you could see where they actually shrunk the bottle and then hid the fact that it shrunk with the plastic thing on it. And then she also took a picture of like a Dove dishwashing soap, and it was 30 ounces a year ago, and now it's 24 ounces. And she's tracking all these little things of shrinkflation. So even if they did hold true to, I'm picking the same basket of goods.
Yep.
You could hide a lot of the shrinkflation in there.
Yep.
So
for sure. And that's going to be another one of those things. I think that they're going to stretch that rubber band far enough that eventually people are going to go, now this is a bunch of bovine excrement. You know, these numbers that you're reporting, Mr. Government Man, is not what's happening out here. And, you know, that's not a good thing, because then that's when we start getting, we can get extreme political populism, those sorts of things. You know, it's not good, man. It's not good.
No, it's not good. And you can play this shell game for only so long, and people get hip to it. They're not going to believe anything you say after that.
Yep. Bernie Madoff comes to mind. So
there you go.
So let's dig into these CP numbers just a little bit, and how some of the stuff they use to manipulate them. There's two big ways they manipulate it. The first one is, I believe it's pronounced hedonics, might be hedonics. It comes from the Greek word meaning of or related to pleasure. So, and of course, that's referring to the pleasure we get from whatever product we buy. So if the consumer gets more out of the item, then that increase in pleasure offsets a price increase. So if you go buy a new computer today, Rich, and it's 10% faster than it was a year ago, and you pay 10% more, then the inflation was zero. So put that across the board. And of course, who measures that, right? And one of my favorite examples was the washing machine. I think it was a dryer, actually. It was 10% more efficient. So it used 10% less energy. Well, that's a good thing. However, that offset the 10% price increase. But I got to come up with the extra $50, $75 right now today. And over the lifespan of that appliance, will I really notice the $6 a year I save? No, you won't. So it is, as a consumer, it's not only about does that even out with the hedonics, but it's also about, you know, you got to have the cash flow to do these things. So if you don't have the cash flow to buy the new dryer, well, then you're in a rough spot.
Well, and you put up there yesterday a picture of one of those old Harvest Wheat refrigerators from the 1970s, when that was all the rage. You know, it's funny. We had Harvest Wheat was the color in the 70s, and then it seemed like in the 90s it was
avocado green.
Yeah. It was that, or country blue, or some crap like that. But the thing is, man, those things are still chugging away.
Yep, I got one out in my garage keeping my beer cold.
Yeah, my grandparents.
Hard in Wisconsin, but you know,
my grandparents had a refrigerator from the 50s. Man, it was beautiful. It looked, you know, the shape of it and everything, and it was running until I tried to take it in the house, because we repainted it, and it busted a compressor line. And anyway, but we just don't. The products don't have the same lifespan. And before you take us on a journey to that, I want to hit a couple of comments that are coming in. My good friend Michael Gentili happens to know quite a bit about economics. He says one of the unspoken indicators of economic stress is the percentage of eligible workers employed,
Yes.
which is way down.
Yes, it is. He is dead on correct about that.
Dr. Fuller, of course, says little known fact, well-researched factoid, hedonics is Rich Brown's middle name.
That is of pleasure.
You guessed it.
Yep.
My lovely bride, Miss Lisa's on. Gal says, good morning, Miss Lisa. So, and Ruben says, where's Rich's coffee pot? I need a refill. Come on down to the farm, pal. Got plenty. Okay, so, 25 folks joining us live. Will, where are we going next?
All right, so let's dig into this fridge thing you were just talking about a little bit. So, as we've talked about, there's the hedonics, and so we look at the price and they look at the efficiency of it, and they come up with a number there. But there's a couple of things that are not calculated in there at all, not even considered, and I think most people don't consider it either. You know, that fridge I've got sitting out in the garage is from probably the early 1990s. It's still running. It's simple. It has 2 doors, compressor, some lines, probably Freon in it, as old as it is. It just runs. It's just all it does. Now, the fridge sitting in my kitchen's a different story. It has a door within a door. It has a light that if you knock on the outside of the fridge, it lights up the inside of the fridge so you can look in there without opening the door. Not that stops my children from just opening the door and staring, but that's a different discussion. And I could have gotten one, if I wasn't so cheap, that I could actually stand in the grocery store and the fridge is connected to the Wi-Fi, and I could use the camera inside the fridge to look in there to see, oh, do I need eggs or do I need milk? What do I need? And that's all great. That's okay, fine. If somebody's got the money for it, hey, enjoy your toys. That's part of life, right? But that stuff breaks a whole lot more than the other fridge with 2 doors and a compressor. Well, those repair costs and the insane price of some of those repair costs are not factored into inflation at all. So that changes your quality of life down the road when you got to start paying $250, $300 for a control panel board and have somebody come on and replace it.
Yeah, and we've experienced that living out in the middle of nowhere. There's one appliance repair, a husband and wife team, man, and they're slam book solid. Mm-hmm. And if you call them, they'll tell you which ones to avoid, and it's the ones that have all the gadgets and gizmos,
yep,
all these computers attached to it.
Yep. And one thing I'll throw out there for the members, you know, YouTube is your friend. Not this fridge, but the one I had before this. I just went on YouTube and put in whatever the whoever manufactured it, the model number, and started researching through and was able to determine that it was the control panel. Ran down to a local hardware store that services appliances, ordered up a control panel for $75 and switched it out myself. It was just unplugged, plug back in, and one screw to hold the panel, the chipboard in there, and I was back up and running. So if you're handy, you can save yourself a bunch of money with YouTube and Google.
Spot on, man.
So, you know, also the other thing that does not get factored into inflation if somebody isn't handy, is those extended warranties. Mm-hmm. So they decrease the price of the product or keep the price of the product the same, but it's more likely to break. So the normal person out there is more likely to buy these extended warranties or service plans. Those are not calculated into inflation at all because that is not part of the price of the product. And people are using those more and more now. So that's another place where the manufacturers are holding their prices down, but then putting those other plans out there that a lot of people are taking advantage of because as a society, we don't fix anything anymore. We call somebody, right?
Or we throw it away.
Yeah. So, and then you got to go buy a new one. And so, yeah, there's a lot that goes into that. And I can remember my grandparents, you know, they were all 4 of them were born in 1925, and man, they didn't throw nothing away. They fixed everything. It was maddening at times as a teenager.
Yeah.
So, but I get it now. I get it. And they, you know, it's funny. The older I get, the smarter they were.
That's right. Tell me about geometric. Am I saying that right? Geometric weighing?
Yep. That's a multi-cylinder word. So what they do is this is another way they mess with stuff. And I think this in a way is the opposite of hedonics, because hedonics is for pleasure, right? So geometric weighting says that if the price of steak goes up, well, maybe Rich will buy hamburger or chicken. So isn't that the opposite of for pleasure? Because
Yeah.
if we're going to buy cheaper stuff so that inflation doesn't go up, well, then isn't our pleasure going down? Because I get a whole lot more pleasure out of a steak than I do a burger. I like them both, but I like steak more.
Oh yeah. Yeah,
So
we had this happen, man. The price of ribeye is going up, and normally, we'll have a ribeye night at least one night a week. And I remember my wife texting me from the store like, "Wow, the price of ribeye is this, and could we try sirloin or whatever?" And I'm like, "Okay, well,
yeah,
or a strip," and I'm like, "Okay, well, we'll try it."
yeah,
And it was crap compared to the ribeye, but again, it's if I'm doing that as a consumer, then I got to figure there's a ripple of that in America right now, right?
absolutely. Here's and this is a small example, and this is by no means life altering. But I went to I won't say the name of the place. But I went there to buy staples for my staple gun because I was going to go shooting, and I'm running low on staples. I'm not out yet. I took a picture to show the family. There was maybe 18 slots there for staples to be on. Not a single box of staples in the store. So I went up front and said, "Hey, just curious, do you know when you're going to get those in again?" And the guy says, "Haven't had staples in 3 months. I have no clue when they're showing up."
Wow.
Yeah. So I duct tape the targets on. It works. So it's a little thing. Hey, Kevin Harvey there is asking about coins. What's up with those, Rich?
Coins go out every single week, man. So if you want to become a member of the American Warrior Society, you want to know what coins we're talking about, then you're going to have to check out the link in today's show notes. But yeah, every time members join once a week, my wife and I, we sit down and get those coins shipped out to you guys.
Yep. Hey, a couple other things I'll hit on here. Alan Kelly brings up a really good point with this. More bells and whistles means more to break. Same as all new cars and trucks. I remember back in the day, Rich, growing up in the 80s, and a guy working a little better than a minimum wage job could go afford to buy a brand new S10 pickup. And it had crank up windows and AM FM radio and probably no AC, but it was good basic transportation that was reliable. You can't do that anymore. I mean, a crank up window is like a rotary phone. I mean,
Yeah.
that's you just can't do that anymore. And so now you got these younger people nowadays starting off, they're already behind the eight ball because they're spending, even inflation adjusted, they're spending way more money on vehicles and repairs than you and I ever did.
Well, and I thought about that, something similar. When I was 16 years old in 1986, working at McDonald's, I was making $3.35 an hour, and gas was 68 cents a gallon. So I could roughly buy 5 gallons of gasoline with my minimum wage job.
Mm-hmm.
Well, look at it today. The average price of gas is probably around $3 or a little over $3 a gallon. And if you say, well, minimum wage should be, or roughly 5, a minimum wage worker should be able to buy 5 gallons of gas to get back and forward to his minimum wage job. Then the minimum wage should be $15, but it's not. Okay. And a lot of people are making, $8, $9, $10 an hour. So their wages are not keeping pace with the things that they have to buy.
Yeah.
And again, you can't shrink a gallon of gas. You can play fuzzy math with some of the other things in our economy, but energy you cannot.
Yep. So Steve here asks a question, says, how can people pay $50,000 for a car and keep on buying them with our economy in such crisis? He's driving a 2017 SUV until the wheels fall off. Well, I'm with you, brother. I'm driving a 2008 Sierra, and as I was telling Rich, it's going to roll over 344,000 miles today. And I'm going to run it till the wheels fall off, because that's the only way you get your money out of them. But to answer Steve's question, right now the vast majority of auto loans are subprime, just like the housing was subprime. Is exact same thing. They're just basically handing money to anybody to keep the inventory moving.
And the inventory is not moving. We talked about that before the show. These really complex trucks don't have the processing chips, the microchips in them. So look at the car lots.
Yeah.
We've looked in the town surrounding here because my son is moving to Albuquerque and needs a new vehicle. He's been driving the truck that we handed off to him, and it's probably got about 300,000 miles on it. And it's got some significant mechanical issues. So it's that cost benefit analysis of, do you pay to fix a vehicle with 300,000 miles?
Yep.
Or what?
Just for me, the way I look at it is, if I replace the truck I've got, which is a 3/4 ton truck with a diesel engine in it, I'm going to spend at least 75 grand for a new truck right now. So let's just say that's $1,000 a month on a 6-year loan. So if I spend $500-600 a month on average fixing the truck to keep it running, I'm money ahead. And with those older diesel trucks, you don't even get bragging rights till you get to 500,000. So I've got a few years left because I drive a lot. I drive about 30,000 miles a year. So, so I've got a ways to go before I can even start bragging on the diesel truck forums.
Yeah, exactly.
And the guys who are real studs with that stuff are doing the transportation with those things. They're getting 800,000-900,000 out of them. So, and Alan brings up a good point here about tractors. I've got a little John Deere tractor myself, and I'm amazed the number of chips, computers in that thing. It's a little 25 horse tractor. It's great on fuel economy and so on and so forth, but I can change fluids and filters. That's about all I can do on it.
Yeah, I inherited a 1969 Massey Ferguson tractor here on the farm, and that thing is going strong, man. It is because it is just an engine and an ignition system. It's very simple.
Yep, sure is. So, hey, let's get back to this here first, so we don't eat up too much of people's time here, Rich. So we pretty much covered geometric weighting. They just play with a basket of goods pretty much to get the number they want out of it. At some point, I guess we're all going to eat tofu and vegetables because that'll be cheaper than meat, and they got to keep the numbers looking good. I don't know. I'm not even sure where it's going to go. And of course, none of us know where it's going to go. But as these inflation numbers keep coming up, like you and I believe they're going to, they're going to have to play with these numbers more. And to me, it's one of the warning signs they're really losing control of inflation. Is when they go, hey, we're going to improve the CPI numbers by changing these formulas to make them more accurate. To me, that's a warning sign. If you hear them start talking about that, that's a big warning sign.
No, I totally agree with you. Anybody running a spreadsheet to run their own company would never do that.
Mm-hmm. Well, they could for a little while, but it wouldn't last.
That's right.
So, let me get in a little bit of the history, because people will say, well, inflation was worse in the 70s. Well, true, but based on what measure? Mm-hmm. They started changing these numbers in the 80s, and the last one with the CPI, they changed that one in the 90s. But let me back up just a touch here. There's a website I encourage everybody to go to, shadowstats.com. Shadow Stats, just the way it sounds. They go back through. It is subscription based, but they go back through and you can get some stuff on the free part of the site. And he goes back and uses the old methods of calculating to current day situation. So you can actually get an apples to apples comparison. So this is where it gets scary, folks. So if you take current day inflation, which was just reported for November at 6.8% annualized.
It's the highest in like 30 years, right?
Exactly. If you use the 1990 formulas for that, it's actually 9.8%.
Yeah.
And if you use the 1980 calculations, it's 14.5% inflation.
Wow.
So we're right back where we were in the 70s.
That's
right now. And I think you agree with me, brother. We're on the front edge of it.
We are on the front edge of it. And of course, not to be overly alarmist, because I don't want to just throw around these hyperbolic terms like hyperinflation, and because 14.5% annual inflation is nowhere near the 50% a month you need for hyperinflation. But like you and I have said, it happens slowly at first, then all at once, then the hockey stick goes like that. So is this just a harbinger of something to come a year or so from now?
I mean, I think so. And you know, I've been doing some reading and some thinking about how it may go. And of course, nobody knows. I'm trying to, you know, same way we war game out self-defense scenarios, right? If I'm going into this local stop and rob, I look in the windows before I walk in to get an idea of what's going on, right? So I'm trying to think ahead. What could happen? And I don't think this is the big one, Rich. The more I've thought about it, I think what's going to happen is this is my theory, is we're going to start having problems now. Something's going to happen, whatever that is, whether the stock market crashes or whatever. And they only have one solution to anything anymore, and that is print more money. And I think that's when it's going to go crazy. I think that's when inflation is going to go crazy, just to make that where I'm thinking perfectly clear. I think that's when, because what else are they going to do? They can't lower interest rates. There's no other answer. And so I think the big one will be after the next problem happens. Stock market crash, housing crash, like we talked about. You know, and I think that's when it'll happen. That's my own theory.
Yeah, and I think that at some point, maybe when we get caught up to date, we probably need to discuss why you can't do what Paul Volcker did to end stagflation before, just to stop a runaway inflation. I think we owe it to people watching to actually dig into that a little bit more than a soundbite or two. But
yeah, I agree. That's a show in and of itself.
It is.
So, so, you know, and this is also, you know, how the politics play into things. In the late 90s, Clinton, you know, he indexed Social Security to inflation, and it was applauded for that. Exactly. And in a perfect world, I would applaud him too, because that's a good thing, right? The retired folks, you know, their costs are going up too, and they paid into a system. No matter how we feel about the system, they paid into the system, right? They played by the rules. Well, that was the same time they changed how CPI was calculated. And that was when they started using the geometric weighting, also sometimes called chain CPI. So at the same time he indexes to inflation, they changed how inflation was reported. So the net result was nothing really changed.
Well, and my wife told me, we got an email the other day from DFAS, which is Defense Finance, whatever. And it says, hey, you know, military retiree, your COLA, which is cost of living allowance, is going up. That's going to be the highest raise we've ever done in 30, 40 years, whatever.
Yep.
We're going to raise it up by X percentage because it's adjusted for inflation.
Yeah.
But if you look at it, if inflation's 6.8 or whatever it is, my COLA change on January 1 is like 2%.
Yeah.
So I'm not keeping pace. I'm drowning, matter of fact.
Yeah. Yeah. It doesn't, it's all a shell game, brother. It's all a shell game, you know, bread in circuses, you know. I think there's something in history about that. So let's get something else out of that. I was thinking about moving on to unemployment here.
Let's do it.
All right. And this goes back to, we're going to touch back on what Michael said here a while back about eligible workers. So everybody hears, unemployment is fill in the blank number. Well, did you know, Rich, there's 6 different levels of unemployment numbers? There's U1 through U6. So I'll save everybody the full reading of these, but for instance, U1 is people unemployed 15 weeks or longer. Okay. U2 is U1 plus people who lost jobs and who completed temp jobs. And I guess I will read through all these. Okay. U3 is U2 plus all unemployed people. Okay. So that's your total unemployment. When you hear the unemployment number, it's U3.
Okay.
All right. All right. So U4 is U3 plus discouraged workers. So they're not even trying. Okay. I'm not sure how they're eating, but they're not trying anymore.
They're living in mom's basement, I guess.
U5 is U4 plus persons marginally attached to the workforce. I have no flipping clue what that means.
I was going to say, what is that?
Is
that working under the table? I mean, what is that?
Or maybe they're just picking up day jobs here and there. I really don't know. U6 is U5 plus total employed part-time for economic reasons. Now, I take that to mean they
Okay.
can't find full-time employment, which right now should be 0 based on everything I'm seeing out there. Everybody and their brother needs workers.
Yeah.
So this wasn't always the case. Just like the inflation numbers changed how they were reported, this changed too. And we're going to go back to about the same period of time. Prior to the 70s, basically they reported U6 as unemployment. That's the total. Okay. And this goes back to Michael's point about workforce participation rate. And that is that even U6, even though they say that's total unemployed people, after someone's been unemployed for 24 months, they even drop off U6. They cease to exist as unemployed. So that's where you can start seeing weird things happen with unemployment numbers where more jobs are created in a given month, but the unemployment rate goes up. You ever seen that happen, Rich? Yeah, it happens. It usually happens at the start of an economic recovery, and it's because people come back into the workforce.
Okay.
So you're changing the denominator of the fraction. So even though jobs are created, the unemployment rate goes up. So it's all this fuzzy math because to the average person, they're like, well, 400,000 jobs were added in a given month. How did the unemployment rate go up? Because they've played with the numbers so much that when people come back in the workforce, it becomes counterintuitive. Which again just makes everything harder and harder to believe, right?
Yeah, and again, it's these things are done not for the long game, but for the short game. It's like if we can show that, this quarter we did better. Okay, great. But by playing with these numbers to the tune that they are, whether it's unemployment or the consumer price index or whatever, you manipulate it to the point where at some point it has no meaning anymore. It's just like the excess of printing of money. You do it to the point where it's meaningless.
Yep. Well, it's meaningful, in my opinion, it's meaningful to one group of people, the people that want to get through the next election cycle. Because they can say, well, I got inflation to go down, but nobody talks about how they changed how inflation was measured.
Yeah.
But they got reelected. So there you go. So for November of 2021, just to see the difference, U1 unemployment was 1.8%. This is people unemployed 15 weeks or longer.
This is November. This is last month.
Correct. Yes, sir.
Okay.
U3 was 3.9%, which is what gets reported. Okay. Now, bear in mind, anything under 5% unemployment by the economic book numbers, anything under 5% unemployment is considered full employment for the economy. Does it feel like full employment out there?
Hell no.
No, not even close. I mean, I know a lot of employers throughout the nation. Everybody's struggling for people. Every restaurant I go to when I'm on the road. I mean, there's still hotel restaurants out there that are to go only because they can't get enough staff to staff the restaurant and bar.
Yeah, I have been to so many. I know you travel around the country, obviously, as a captain of a commercial airliner, and as do I. And it's not as a commercial airliner pilot, but doing what I do.
It's pretty easy. You pull back, the houses get smaller. You push forward, the houses get bigger.
I'll write that down.
Yeah.
But it's the same thing, man. We'll go, this restaurant's great, and we pull up to it, and there's a sign saying, "We're closed today. Can't get enough people to work." And I see this again and again and again. And Tony says, "How about the quality of jobs that are created? Time to go back to producing quality goods on our own soil." Yeah.
Tony, we're gonna swing back to that at the end here.
Yeah. And Dr. Gordon Botson is on. Says, "Good morning, gents. Good morning, Dr. Botson." He is coin number 1688 in Ohio.
And Will Parker says they lie. It's almost like he's been paying attention.
Yeah. My brother Jeff Brown says every store in Key West has a help wanted sign in the door. Jeff, yeah, man. And it's not Key West. It's Duluth. It's Nashville. It's Knoxville. It's in Wisconsin.
Yep.
Drive down any street and you'll just see sign after sign after sign.
Yep.
Everybody is struggling for workers. Matter of fact, I wasn't going to tell this, but I will. One of the businesses that I've got my toe in, I got a phone call the other day and says, "Hey, you know what? This is the U.S. Department of Labor, and you have to report your numbers for November." I said, "Are you ordering me to report the numbers? Because otherwise, I'm not telling you anything."
Yep.
And like, well, we pulled your EIN out of the hat, so pursuant to U.S. code, blah blah blah, you got to give us these numbers. And And that's what they were trying to get a hold of is some of this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, look, these are the workers I have. I should have a force of 10 people. Instead, I've got 5. Can't find enough freaking people that want to work, man.
Yep.
We've had the same ZipRecruiter, Indeed stuff out there for a while, and it's harming our ability to take on additional work because can't find enough people.
Yep. Yeah. It got to the point there for a while with my business. We just stopped advertising for help because we were just throwing money away every month. And at that time there was so much, it was still the very extended unemployment and all the stimmy checks. And people were just showing up for the job interview, obviously attempting to tank it because they have to show they're trying to find a job. Well, I interviewed at so-and-so, so I tried.
Right.
So we just stopped advertising, which is sad,
Yeah. But again, it goes back to kind of like, it's almost, I don't know if it's textbook moral hazard, but if you just dump helicopter money on the country, why in the hell would anybody work?
Yeah. Exactly, and I agree. It is a moral hazard for sure. Because now these people are gonna, when they do need to work, when eventually something changes and they have to work, there's not gonna be any skills there.
Yeah, Jared says I changed in industries mostly because I couldn't find employees. Yeah, man. I ran into a guy, he's a former Marine, and he's like, I'm like, hey, what are you doing here in Oak Ridge, Tennessee? He's like, I'm here to buy some robotics. I run a factory up in wherever it was, Michigan. I said, oh, and it was the same story. He's like, can't find anybody, so I'm just going to automate as much of the process I can.
Yep. And that's where, you get into those discussions about that or raising the minimum wage to whatever, pick your number. At some point, it's easier just to hire machines.
Yeah.
They
show up to work on time.
That's it. And when they break, there's no emotions involved. You just fix them.
And they're not trying to have sex with other robots in your factory either.
Yet.
Yet.
Hey, one last thing on unemployment stats. Shadow Stats again, shadowstats.com. His for October of 2021, so just over a month ago, his estimation of unemployment that includes the long-term discouraged, which back in the 70s was included. Okay. He says the unemployment rate today using those numbers is about 25%.
Wow.
Now, obviously some of that is by choice because there's enough stimmy checks out there. People are getting by. And yeah, so, yeah. And
we're in the middle of this. They call it the Great Resignation. And it's going to be interesting to look back on this one with some clarity once, we figure it out when get the math stabilized. But I love the way this guy Shadow Stats is doing his thing, because if we're doing apples to apples comparison, which is what we should be doing, then according to your or his math, we're at 25% unemployment. Wow.
Yeah. And that's, and segue into something different, demographics as a country, we're getting older. So there's another concern out there is that as the boomers start dying off and leaving, in some cases, great sums of money, because what the stock market has done the last 25, 30 years, really since 1980, and they start leaving, in some cases, pretty substantial sums of money to these younger people that are part of the Great Resignation. They may never work again. They'll just take their standard of living to whatever that money will sustain. And then why work?
Yeah, but again, I think with the devaluation of the dollar going, you might think grandpa is going to leave you $500K, but when you get $500K, man, it may buy you a new 2024 Ford F-150, and that's about it.
Yeah. Could well be. So, which could then bring about the next big problem is suddenly you've got a whole bunch of people who thought they were set for life and now they aren't. And
That's right.
Based on the mentality out there we're seeing, who are they going to go looking for something? They're going to be looking for more stimmy checks.
And you can't print your way out of this problem, guys.
Yeah. You can print yourself into more problems. That's for darn sure, though.
But you can't print your way out of them.
Yep. So, so the Great Moderation is commonly accepted to have ended in 2007 with the housing crisis, because now the obviously it was no longer moderate. It got pretty bad there. And I just on just from my standpoint, and we've talked about it before, Rich, as the defenders of our families, guys, we got to know this stuff. The way they change the CPI, that affects the financial decisions we make, and then that affects other decisions, and then eventually, to bring it home for you guys, eventually it will affect your ammo budget. I know it won't. It'll be a long time before you let that happen, but eventually it will affect your ammo budget. So then now I know I have your attention.
Yeah, that's true, man. And my brother Jess says free stuff. Give me all my free stuff. Yeah, and somebody's got to pay for that free stuff, and the bill's going to come due at some point.
That's it. As Milton Friedman is widely accepted as being the one who said, there is no such thing as a free lunch.
Yeah. So next time on Emerging Threats Monday, I get to take it from. I get to carry the ball from here, right?
Yep.
So am I going to go 2008 till today? What do you think? Will?
See what you think. Because you got a lot to cover there with the housing crisis, the Big Short. I mean, there's a lot there. So see where you get, and then if that brings us up through current day, that's awesome. If it's short of that, then I'll pick it up from there and bring us up through current day.
Okay. I probably would do that. I may just talk 2007 to 2009 or 2010. Let you take it from there.
Okay. Hey, a couple things ahead. I wanted to hit some current events, and it kind of circles back to some of our previous shows in a couple of these. The first one, the Labor Department reported that from October to November of 2021, real wages, which is anytime you hear the word real, guys, real means inflation adjusted. Okay. So real wages decreased 0.4% from October to November of this year. So in 1 month, real wages went down 0.4%. So your purchasing power just went down, just like you were talking about with your cost of living adjustment there, Rich.
Yeah.
Okay. But this is where people, they're going to be a little slow on the uptake. Wages increased 0.3%. However, the inflation was 0.7% month over month, hence the decrease in purchasing power.
Yeah, there's a lot of stats thrown at you this morning. I think some of the ones that you need to really pay attention to are the stats that Will threw out from, what's the name of that website again, Will?
Shadow Stats.
Shadow Stats.
Yep.
Because to have a true apples to apples comparison of where we are through the year, man, if you can imagine that graph, it would not look pretty, I'm sure.
Yeah, it does not. And there are some in the free part of that website. There are some very interesting charts showing side by side comparisons on these numbers. Another one, and this one helped form my opinion about what the next emergency might be, Rich. And it was a Wall Street Journal article. It's in the list of links if you can throw those in there.
They're in there, yeah.
Okay, awesome. Reports that over the last 2 years, Americans have increased their savings by $1.6 trillion. It was also reported in another article that only 47% of all the stimulus money sent out was spent. So only about half of it was spent. The rest is just sitting in savings. And as this inflation ticks up, it'll become that self-licking ice cream cone, and people will get after it. They will start spending these before they lose that purchasing power. And tied into that, my beautiful bride went looking for furniture yesterday, and she said, I'll take this set right here. And they said, oh yeah, okay, that'll be 9 months.
Yeah. And
so now we're trying to decide. They wouldn't sell us the floor model because they can't get anything to replace it with to show people. So they wouldn't sell us the floor model, which of course I wanted a discount on because I'm cheap. But so we ordered it because we'll keep looking around. We'll cancel the order if we have to, but we're going to get all that stuff ordered up, which is going to help drive these prices up even more. So,
yeah, I read that. You sent me that Wall Street Journal article yesterday, and I did read it. And it was how much? 1.6 trillion that consumers were sitting on.
Yep. 1.6.
Yeah. And I think there's a lot of that. And I'm just speaking for myself here. I wouldn't mind spending some of this because I want to get rid of these dollars and turn them into assets, right?
Yep.
But whether it's because I think a lot of people forget the fact that how do you combat hyperinflation? You buy assets with indebtedness.
Right.
which sounds counterintuitive.
Mm-hmm.
But I saw a video on I think it was YouTube Economics Explained, and it said if you were smart and you knew the hyperinflation was coming in Weimar Germany, what you would do is go buy a house.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time, a house in Weimar Germany cost $8,000. Okay. And then you would put 2,000 down and start making your monthly payments on your 30-year note.
Mm-hmm.
And he says, and then one day during hyperinflation, you walk out of your office and you hand a marble to a little boy, a marble that you found on the street, and ask him to give you $6,000 for it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because he's got stacks of it. He's burning by the side of the road. You walk into your bank and pay off your mortgage. It's a strange way to think about things, but you got to start leaning into this. And here's the deal, man. You and I, self-defense guys, shooters, jiu-jitsu guys, we would rather be talking about this.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as threats to our family and our family's future, we have to look into this.
Absolutely. This is, I mean, I love shooting. I love jiu-jitsu. I love playing with knives, sticks, all that stuff. But the day-to-day living, you got to live day-to-day. You know, that for sure is going to impact your life. We hope that violence never enters our lives, and we want to be ready for it if it does. But for sure, inflation is entering your life right now. So you got to be ready for that. That's part of protecting your family.
And how high will it go? I don't have a clue. But I tend to listen to people that like Dr. Michael Burry and others. I mean, hell, Jack Dorsey, CEO of Twitter, or the former CEO of Twitter, he's ringing that hyperinflation bell too.
He sure is.
And these people have a lot of financial at stake here. So
yeah. Hey, let me throw a couple more things at you here, Rich. There was an article. It's in that list of links. I'll just hit a few of the high points. It goes through some of the major inflation numbers or components of it. For instance, furniture jumped 12% compared to a year ago. Major appliances up 5.5%. New vehicles up 11%. Used cars 31%, brother, in a year. It's crazy. Car parts up 10%, which I was just talking with my eldest son yesterday about budgeting stuff because he's involved with that for himself. And I was like, be ready for car insurance to go up, because if you total your car, the car they have to buy you to replace it is going to be more expensive. If they have to repair it, the parts are more expensive. So it filters through everything, brother.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah. So as part of that in the family, you know, we have certain sets of rules, just as I'm sure you do in your house, Rich. And one of the ones I just changed yesterday was the 5-second rule. Because of the cost of food increasing, is now the 10-second rule. So if it's on the floor for 10 seconds, you can still eat it instead of 5 seconds, because food's getting expensive. So
that's right.
we got to change how we look at these things.
And your point about car parts is incredibly important. Please go and watch some of the documentaries floating around the interwebs about Venezuela, and you'll see these people that own a taxi or whatever to subsidize their income. They get off work and they drive a taxi, but yet they can't get the car parts to keep the taxis running. Because
and to that same end, brother, I went and purchased, it was a few months back, I went and purchased a year's worth of oil change and filters for my truck, because I do my own work. So I went and bought a year's worth. Smart. And so for me, that's, 3 to 4 oil changes a year based on how much I drive. So I went and bought it. Worst case scenario, if we're totally wrong, then maybe the price goes down a little bit and I go, oh shucks, it went down. But that's just my opportunity cost at that point.
And it's the same thing we've talked about for food. I've got 2 deep freezers full of food, and we converted the canning room that Memo had into it's a canning room, all right, but it's stocked to the floor and ceiling. We're going to eat our way through it, but why not buy it at today's dollars instead of waiting on 2022 to just hurt us.
And there's the old saying, the rich get rich and the poor get poorer. The way I've come to think about that, Rich, is not obviously the way that saying is meant is in how much money someone has, right? But I've really come to think of it more as knowledge. Those who are rich in knowledge will become wealthier because we'll do things like this. And I'm not putting down anybody who doesn't do things like this, but we're leveraging that knowledge along with some action to better prepare ourselves and our families for these things, and that will let us be wealthier in the future.
Yeah. And for the folks that are listening to the podcast version of today's show, I'm going to read a couple of these statements from some of the folks watching today. This comes from Dan. Dan says there are many in some states that were in the service industry who did not qualify for unemployment because they did not make enough. This also disqualified them for the federal stimulus. These same employees have chosen not to re-enter the service industry. Mm-hmm. Tony says, what was the unemployment 6 for November? It was 7.4%. But like Will said, if you really look apples to apples, it should have been closer to 25% on shadow stats. Jesse says, in Michigan, my job hiring rate is like $5 or $6 higher than most state minimum wages, and we can't keep or hire people because no one wants to work, especially inside of a factory. Mm-hmm. Dr. Gordon Botson says we're still waiting for some chairs we ordered back in February. Wow.
Yeah.
Let's see. Alan Kelly says Christmas gifts for the granddaughters. What they want is non-existent or delayed ordered and more expensive when purchasing if ordered. Robert Davies says, I was just informed that my employer is shutting down after nearly 50 years, so I'm entering the job market again. Well, Robert, if there's ever time to look for a job, right now is probably a pretty doggone good time mm-hmm. because everybody's hiring.
Yep.
I mean, I do hate that for you, but
yeah.
Tony says the increase in cost of gun parts and raw foods affects a small business like mine tremendously. And yeah, Tony has a freeze-dried business, and please put that link up, Tony, where folks can find out about your freeze-dried foods, because putting something back for 25 years is probably a really good idea.
Yep.
Alan says we all got to be prepared, not a prepper per se, but we buy extra each time we go to the store. And it's not just groceries, it's everyday items as well.
You know, and Alan brings up a good point. When we started buying extra, for me, it was an unexpected perk of that, Rich, was that we started only buying things on sale for the most part. Because if you've got, throw a number out there, 3 months worth of tuna, and you eat a lot of tuna salad or tuna casserole or what have you, well, you don't have to buy it each week or even each month. You can wait for that big sale and then stock up again. And what we found was our food bill went down about 10% when we started doing that.
Yeah.
Required a little diligence. And there's still some days, hey, I want this. So you go buy that, you know. But if rough times get on you, you know, that tuna is going to taste just fine.
That's exactly right.
Jeff asked, do I use coupons? No, I'm really bad at that. I should use them. I don't. I'm just not good at that, to be honest with you. It comes down to there's only so much time in the day.
My wife is a coupon commissar, man. I'm telling you, she's a ninja at the coupons.
Good for her.
Yeah, anything you can do, man, to better your family, then you can take those savings and buy more ammo and gun parts.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, Will Parker brings up a good point. He's refining his house at 1.75%. Good for you, brother. And getting a little extra to invest. And, you know, there's something to be said for that, because debt gets erased with inflation. Or I mean, even right now, at that rate he's refining at, it's free money.
Yeah. That's exactly right.
Inflation, it's free money. So you take and invest that in some hard assets, whether that be gold, silver, I argue for crypto as well as part of it, and buy ahead on other things you need. You know, that's just good, smart buying right there.
Yeah. And, you know, we thought about buying a vacation property maybe a year ago, but right now they're just so hard to find. The prices are skyrocketing because everybody's thinking the same thing.
Yep.
That whatever you buy is going to be erased with inflation. So those with money and are paying attention to what's going on are having the same thoughts. So it's a little harder than you would imagine. Yeah.
Well, and I've looked at the same thing, and of course my concern looking further down the road is that eventually they're going to have to raise interest rates. And if the Fed doesn't raise interest rates, eventually the bond market will raise interest rates for them. At that point, then the value of those properties is going to go way down like it did in the 70s.
Yeah.
So part of it is, I mean, if it's your primary residence, kind of who cares what happens to the value of it? You got to live somewhere. But for an investment property, it's something I've been trying to noodle out. Do I do it? Do I not do it? I just don't know what the answer is.
I don't either. Guile in the Philippines says, stocking up here. I'm not in the U.S., but we feel the problems you guys have. Problem here is people don't understand stocking up. They start to buy when the problem occurs. My girlfriend thought I was crazy about owning a few guns and stocking up on food and supplies, but when the pandemic came, she realized I was right.
Yep.
Yes, you were.
Yep, he sure was. And that's one of the things we'll touch on later on is why we have one of the theories I have, at least, and it's out there, why we haven't seen worse inflation in the last 10 to 15 years. And it has to do with it went to other places. We sent our inflation overseas. When all that manufacturing went overseas, we sent the money over there too. So
that's a good point.
So yeah. And Jeff says a $500,000 house 2 years ago here, which I assume he means Key West there, can't be touched now for less than 1.5 million.
Yeah.
Those are crazy numbers, man.
Yeah. Jesse says the housing market is so crazy that there's a house on the market that has severe fire damage listing for over $90,000. And there's at least 15 people watching and waiting for it to go to auction.
Yeah.
Same thing here in Tennessee, man. A house was almost gutted by fire. And as soon as it went on the market, it was sold almost immediately for asking price.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Well, anything. So today's show notes, all the show notes, all the notes that we'll use to put today's show together, all the links are right there in today's show notes. So please take advantage of that. Will, anything else before we get off here today?
No, sir. That's all I have.
All right, guys. Will, I'm going to let you close it out. It's been your show, man. What a heck of a show you had. Thank you to the 20 plus folks that watched today's show and everyone that'll watch in the replays, man. I appreciate you being on with us. But remember, action is, or information is nothing without action. So with that said, we'll close us out.
Folks, the fight's coming. Be ready.